I love making two-in-one recipes, and today happens to be one of those days. We are making some donuts and bread using the same ingredients, same flour. Let's go. So I'm using bananas. The reason why I'm using banana is because when I was about to make the recipe, I realized that we didn't have sugar. But we had 3 bananas left. So I took it out from the fridge and I decided to use that. So I'm grating some nutmeg, added some vanilla extras, and this was the sugar that we had, just about a tablespoon and small bit. So I added some salt to that and I'm going to mix that as well. I also melted my butter. This is about 2 to 3 tablespoons of that, and you're getting this effect because the banana was chilled from the fridge and all of that. So I added some water to this, milk powder, gave this a nice stir. I'll leave the exact measures in my description box, after which I am going to sieve my flour in there. I'm using bread flour or hard flour. Okay, so I'll just sieve it nicely and then go ahead, use my fork to mix this. And then I remember that, I forgot to add my yeast. So I added a tablespoon of yeast, mix this nicely, and then it was soft at this point. If you want to do like puff puff, this will be good enough for you to go. But then I'm making bread and donuts, so the flour needs to be hard. So I added some extra flour to it, and then now I'll just go ahead and use my hand to knead. In all, I use about 7 cups of flour. As I said, I'll leave the exact measures, okay, for your convenience. So I'll just use my hand to rub against the saucepan like this, my mixing bowl like this. It's better even if you put it on a table or put it on your lap and do this. Okay, it's so easy. So once you need it to the point where you place your finger on it, it comes out effortlessly. It is good to go. I put some oil around it just so it does not stick in the pan, covered it and kept it in a warm place because I want to use it the same day. Okay. Then I've also cut my parchment paper. I'm putting some flour on it. That's going to be for the donuts. So once I was done with that, this was about 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, for the donuts, I didn't need it for it to wait for that long. So I'm going to I will just cut the parts that I need for the donuts, and then I'll leave the rest for the bread to continue rising. So while I work on the donut, the ones for the bread will just continue rising. So I took part of that as usual. I'm going to clean my surface with some vinegar, and yeah, that's it. And I'll now be rolling out this dough so that I can cut it into my donut shape. So for it not to stick on my surface, I'm so generous with this flour because this dough is very, very soft. Okay, if your dough is hard, please don't use don't use a lot of flour, but then using it will help it not to stick. Now, very important that you use something that you can actually something that is up like what I'm using. When you use something that is closer to the dough, like maybe the lid of this one, it's very difficult to cut them out. Okay, so I'm using the container itself, and I'll use the bottle itself as well. Okay, I prefer using the bottle to take out or make the hole instead of using the cover of the bottle. I find that to be very stressful. And then the thickness of the dough really depends on you. If you want a huge donut, you can make it thicker than I am doing. Okay, but I'm going for these sizes. Okay, so after I finished working on them, I went in for the rest of the dough. You can see it had increased in size from what we saw in the beginning, and I'm now coming to mold that for my bread. So I added a little flour to that as well, and then I'll just mold them into round shapes, sort of like bread rolls type, just that. And that is what I'll be using for my bread. So once all is done, I'll just cover them. This is the one I did for the bread, and the donuts, I'll cover them and keep them in a warm place for them to double in size. Then yes, this is after a couple of minutes, about 40 minutes. Then yeah, this is how it's looking, and it is good for us to fry. For the bread, it could go a little further. So I just used one of the little ones, the ones that were in the middle, to test the oil. And once I was convinced that it was done, I took out the paper, and then I am just frying them, dropping them into the oil gently. Make sure that you have some flour in your palm, so that the dough doesn't stick, okay, so that it's very easy for you to drop it. And then fry this under medium heat, okay, turning it around as they brown. As to whether you want this golden brown, or it really depends on you, okay. So this is what I'm going for at this point. It is nicely fried and beautifully done. It's so simple, isn't it? So this is the rest of it. I'll just fry that as well, and then put this on my rack and let this cool. And while that cools, I'll be adding something extra to it to make it nice. This is some chocolate, a white chocolate. I'll just go ahead. I'm using just half of it. I'm not using everything. I'll use my knife to cut them into small pieces. I'll microwave it for a minute or two. But I noticed that this particular chocolate wasn't melting. Usually when you microwave it, it should melt, okay, but this white chocolate, it has mint in the white chocolate and mint. It didn't really melt. I had to add oil to lighten it up a bit, which worked, okay, but it could have been better. Yeah, so I will just dip my donuts in there, and then for the others too, I'm adding some chocolate. So for the chocolate, it worked perfectly. This was just a minute in the microwave, and look how it's looking. This is correct chocolate. So I also dip in my donuts. Ta-da! This is like my favorite. I love donuts in chocolate. I love donuts in chocolate, so I'll do that as well and put it on my parchment paper. And then you can do extra stuff to it, like adding some nuts to it, which I'm about to do. You can use just regular roasted groundnuts or any nuts at all that you have. Use your knife to crush them, or whatever you can do to crush them. And then once that is done, you are going to spread them nicely all over your donuts. And at this point, it's really up to you. I just left some for anyone who doesn't like all the drama that is happening here, but this was absolutely good. And this was also done. The bread was in a good place for us to now bake, and we baked this for 30 minutes under medium heat. And just look at that, just look at that. It was so good, guys. 2-in-1 recipe. You make one dough, use some for your bread, use some for your donuts. I mean, how good is this? Okay, and then just look at this. Just this is so good, guys. You should definitely give this a try. This is like a gift idea, so give this a try. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again in another video. Kindly support me by giving me a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you again. Bye.